Hey y'all, Professor Luce here, and today we're going to talk about the special occasion speech. You do have access to the assignment sheet, so there's a lot of information there, and of course you do have readings that you can go back and review about the special occasion speech, but I did want to talk about some general principles for the speech itself. With the assignment, you do have a lot of options. The most basic ones are the general speeches that I'm going to talk about today. It doesn't mean those are your only options, but if you want to pursue something out of the 4 or 5 big speeches that I'm going to talk about today, I say you email me or talk to me first before submitting it on your topic sheet, just to make sure we're 100% on the same page. So the 4/5 basic speeches that usually take up the majority of the speeches would be a wedding toast, a eulogy, giving an award, accepting an award. I kind of count those as like the same thing. And then a commencement speech, which you may know is a graduation speech. Those are pretty much the 4 or 5 that go together that most people tend to do. So I'm going to talk about each of those a little bit more. I am going to provide a PowerPoint with some sample videos that you can watch as well. And so that way you can go back and see some of those examples. Before I get into detail about any of them, I do want to talk about the overall assignment sheet. It's 2 to 4 minutes, so you do have a little bit more leeway with the assignment itself. You get to be creative if you want to with these, and I'll talk about those with some individual examples, or you can do what is considered more traditional speech for that genre. You will see that you have the option to be creative in numerous ways. It's just kind of up to you. You must use your own material. So the one big restriction on these types of speeches is that you have to create the content. That means you can't just do a famous speech from like a movie or a play or something like that. You have to create the content yourself. That's what's key. Make sure you review the grading rubric. It is generic on purpose because you wouldn't want the same grading criteria for an introduction for a wedding toast as you would a eulogy. So it'll say something like appropriate introduction for the genre. That just means that it's appropriate for whatever style you pick, because you should not say, "We are all gathered here today to mourn the loss of a good man," for a wedding toast. You may think it's funny, but you still shouldn't do it. However, that would be appropriate for a eulogy. The only other thing that I'm going to mention now is that you should make sure that if you choose a eulogy or perhaps another topic area, that you are absolutely certain that you are not emotionally connected to that speech topic. So by that, I mean, if you happen to lose a pet over the past couple of weeks, you probably shouldn't give a eulogy to that pet. If you lost a pet 5 years ago and you're comfortable giving the eulogy now, that's perfectly fine. So just make sure that you're emotionally capable of doing it. Okay, so let's talk about wedding toasts a little bit. Wedding toasts tend to have a pretty traditional arc to them, regardless of what type of speech you're giving. And so it could be a best man speech, it could be a maid of honor speech, it could be you are one of either the bride, the groom, whatever kind of combination you have, it could be one of them, but they're still going to have the same arc for the most part. First, you need to identify who you are. You might say, "I am the best man, and I have known the groom since we were kids." Whatever the case may be, that's what you want to use. The next step is usually identifying the relationship of the couple. So you would talk about your connection to the person very briefly, and then talk about the couple, what you've observed, what you know about them, why they're a good fit for each other. You talk about how they're great together, and then you usually end the speech with well wishes. Humor is acceptable, but it needs to be appropriate humor. What is key is that you are not crossing boundaries. If it is at all questionable, you should not utilize it. I know a lot of times in movies you see like almost a roast of the groom from the best man. That's not okay. A little bit of humor is fine, but remember, this is not your opportunity to do stand-up comedy. It's a wedding toast. You're supposed to honor the people involved, and therefore you need to make sure the humor is appropriate. Generally speaking, you have a little bit of leeway in terms of the stories that you're telling, but you want to make sure that the focus of the speech remains on the bride, groom, it can be a bride and a bride, it can be a groom and a groom, it's up to you to determine, but that's who the focus of the speech needs to be on. Also, you get leeway with topics. So traditional wedding speech would say that, you are there to celebrate the joining of two people. However, if you wish, you are more than welcome to give a wedding toast to celebrities. I realize you're not going to actually know them. It doesn't have to be a real wedding toast. It could be two celebrities that you want to be at their wedding. It could be a toast to inanimate objects. So, for example, I've seen a really funny wedding toast to peanut butter and chocolate. So it's completely up to you to be a little bit creative here. You get the general idea with a wedding toast, but if you want to take it in a different direction, that's usually fine as well. The next area that I'm going to talk about is going to be a eulogy speech. So with a eulogy, there's there's one rule that you absolutely have to follow, and that's basically don't speak ill of the dead, both for the speech and in real life. If you feel like you can't say something that's appropriate, that is positive, then you shouldn't be giving that speech. And I understand life is complicated, it's messy, you may not have good things to say about a person, but that just means you should decline to speak. Another thing to remember is that it's not a resume. You don't need to have a laundry list of things. You don't have to say that, they had 20 grandkids, they worked for so-and-so company for 35 years. What the eulogy is for is to help people heal. And the way you do that is talk about qualities of the person or stories that you have of the person and how their memory can live on in a positive way. So if they taught you the value of hard work, that is definitely something that you could relate in a story, because that's something that people can take with them and live by that on a regular basis. So those types of things are perfectly appropriate. Those stories should be personal. If you know of stories that apply to other people, that's usually fine as well. But you really do want to be a storyteller with a eulogy. And remember, it's about moving forward and talking about the positive impacts that person had on you. Generally speaking, there's not really a limit on the number of stories that you can have. Most eulogies are a little bit shorter, but you do want to keep in mind that you're not there to speak forever either. In terms of giving an award and accepting an award, those are specifically outlined in the book. In terms of giving an award, you got to make sure that you identify what the award is. You want to recognize if anybody has contributed to that award. If someone has donated money, you definitely want to recognize them. You might talk about the history of the award if that's applicable. You might be able to talk about some of the other contestants. The idea is you build up a little bit of suspense prior to announcing the winner. So the laundry list of things that the person has done is perfectly acceptable. You don't need to identify that person specifically until the very end, and then you would welcome them up to accept the award. In terms of accepting an award, that's sort of where that speech would start. The first big thing you have to remember is be humble. You don't put down other people. You want to recognize or at least identify the people that contributed to the award and make sure you thank them. You would probably thank people that have helped you. You might identify some of the other people that did great work. And then, of course, at the end, you basically just say thank you. Accepting an award is really easy. For the eulogy and for giving and accepting an award, again, you don't have to take it literally. So for a eulogy, I've seen some really funny eulogies. I've seen a eulogy to a car. I've seen a eulogy to a phone. Unfortunately, I've seen some eulogies to a GPA. I've seen a eulogy, this is probably the funniest one at HGTC, was a eulogy to Chick-fil-A, and she actually had pictures of as the Chick-fil-A withered away over time, and it was really funny. And then I've seen a eulogy to donuts, and I've also seen a eulogy to Britney Spears' career. So all those are options for the eulogy. As far as the awards, people have made up various awards. You don't actually have to be receiving that award in order to, make the speech about it. You could be the MVP of a Super Bowl if you wanted to. The last speech I'm going to talk about is the commencement speech or graduation speech. So for a lot of you, you may want to work on this because this might be something you're giving pretty soon. So that is an option as well. Traditionally, you want to make sure that it's about the class, not about you. You might talk about tough times. You might talk about funny moments in the class. Again, it all has to be appropriate discussions, examples, stories, so you want to keep that in mind. But you got to remember that you want to make sure that the speech is applicable to the rest of the class, not just to you. So in doing that, you want to do things like talk about stories or experiences you might share, talk about tough times. You might talk about the transition between years. And then, of course, you would end the speech on an optimistic note about, being able to go out in the world and be able to go on adventures, that sort of thing. You wouldn't end it by saying something like, and now that we graduated, we're off to go into a terrible economy where there's no jobs and we're probably all going to be homeless. You want to make sure that's a positive ending to it. So those are the basic categories. If you want to do something beyond that, you are more than welcome to. Some examples of other categories. I've had some people do slam poetry. I've had some people do stand-up comedy routines. I've had 2 students perform their own songs. One went well, one did not. So there's some room there. Other common ones would be anniversary speech. I've seen that more than once. I've seen retirement speeches. So you do have a couple of options outside of these genres, and I'm open to new things as well. But again, you need to talk to me individually before you pursue that. Okay, that's it. That's all I have about special occasions. Looking forward to these. These are by far my favorite speeches of the semester. I hope you have some fun with it.